All right, seem to be working now. Okay, cool. All right, so take out the sheet from yesterday, y'all. And you'll need a pen and a highlighter, but you don't need a laptop, and you definitely don't need a phone. Yeah.
Can I get a sheet?
Well, didn't you have one yesterday?
I wasn't here either.
Oh. Okay, but I gave them out on Wednesday last week.
Okay, it's one of those?
Yeah.
Then I can have it.
Yeah, and if you don't, I think there might be an extra in the back. You just gotta go hunt for it. Okay. All right, so everybody, let's kind of rein it in a little bit. I think y'all's journal topics got you excited, especially the girls in here. All right, so we're gonna take a look at Mr. Flood's party. Yeah. It doesn't have. Oh, you must have gotten my original. Okay, so is there another sheet back there that maybe look behind you, Kate? There might be some on top of. Yeah, check and see on the bottom if there's anything. Well, you may just have to look on with someone because I am down to my last copy, okay? All right, so this is Mr. Flood's party. So we already know that E.A. Robinson wrote what type of ism? Realism, yes. And we know that he's very much interested in the psychology of his characters, kind of like I'm a little interested in the psychology of Madeline picking her K-pop stars for her dinner party, so I'm not sure what that's supposed to mean, but I'm sure there's symbolism in there somewhere. Something else that we didn't really talk a lot about, though, is that his character names are usually really important, okay? We got Richard Cory. That's maybe not as significant, but Miniver Cheevy, even the name kind of sounds like minimal achievement. And Miniver Cheevy has minimal achievement. Why? What is his issue?
He focuses on his past.
Yeah, he focuses on the past, romanticizes the past. In fact, he thinks had he been born in medieval times, he would have been awesome. Probably wouldn't have been so awesome because we know what he seems to not understand, and that is medieval times were pretty tough. You probably wouldn't have lived your best life had that been your time period, right? All right, take a look at Mr. Flood's party. So this man's name is Eben Flood. And Eben Flood kind of sounds like an old expression, the ebb and flow, okay? And you hear ebb and flow when you deal with like the tides, because the tides roll in, they roll out. They do this like nonstop, right? So ebb and flow has to do with time. And that makes sense when we read this poem, okay? So this one's kind of long. I'm just going to read it, ask you questions, and we'll kind of talk it through, okay? So it begins, Old Eben Flood, climbing alone one night over the hill between the town below and the forsaken upland hermitage that held as much as he should ever know on earth again of home, paused warily. Okay, so there's a location where he is. So Eben Flood, old Eben Flood, has gone up on this hill, right? And he's on this hill, and on one side he can look down at the town where he has probably lived his adult life. Maybe he even grew up there. We don't know. Y'all okay back there? All right. And on the other side, he can look down at what's called the Hermitage. Okay? Now, a hermitage is where a hermit would live. Okay? And do hermits have friends and family and neighbors that visit often? No. So, his home is the hermitage, and that kind of indicates to us that this man's pretty isolated. That and the fact that he's up there by himself, okay? So he's up there on top of this hill, right? And let's see. The road was his with not a native near, so no one's close by. And Eben, having leisure, said aloud for no man else in Tilbury town to hear, well, Mr. Flood, we have the harvest moon again, and we may not have many more. Highlight those two lines. Well, Mr. Flood, we have the harvest moon again, and we may not have many more. All right, so first off, who is he talking to?
Himself.
Talking to himself. Okay, he's the only one there, right? And the harvest moon, I mean, I think of fall, right? And he says, we have the harvest moon again, and we may not have many more. What does he seem to know about himself, his life? Yeah, he's old. It's coming to an end, okay? So as you continue to read this, you get the sense that this gathering on top of this hill where he's alone in this particular moment used to be a gathering of probably several. You know, maybe once a year he and his friends would, venture to the top of this hill and look down on the town and think over the past year, right? What they'd learned, how they'd grown, looking towards the future as well. But now there's only one. Why? What's happened to his friends, y'all? They've all died. He's outlived his friends. Okay, a lot of pathos in this little poem, okay? So, to emphasize time, we get this other expression. The bird is on the wing, the poet says. Anybody know what the bird is on the wing, what that means? It means time flies. The bird is on the wing. Time goes very quickly, right? The bird is on the wing, the poet says. And you and I have said it here before. Drink to the bird. He raised up to the light the jug that he'd gone so far to fill and answered huskily, well, Mr. Flood, since you propose it, I suppose I will, or I believe I will. So what do you think's in the jug?
Alcohol?
Yeah, some kind of alcohol. Could be wine, could be whiskey. We don't know. It's definitely not water. Yeah, moonshine. Okay. Alone, as if enduring to the end, highlight these lines, of valiant armor, of scarred hopes outworn. He stood there in the middle of the road like Roland's ghost, winding a silent horn. Wow, that is really beautifully written. So, this stuff about Roland's ghost is actually an allusion to an old poem, and I studied it once, but I honestly can't remember much about it. But that's not the part that I really want to focus on. He's alone, we got that, and he endures. I mean, just enduring is a heroic act, okay? And that's emphasized in this line, a valiant armor of scarred hopes outworn. So he has this armor made of what? Nicholas, I feel like you're taking a nap. Wake up. His scarred hopes, y'all. And it totally makes sense because doesn't scar tissue like harden and, provide some kind of, I guess, protection or armor? So he's got this armor that he wears made of scarred hopes. So does this man understand disappointment? Oh, yeah. He had hopes and dreams, but they've not all come true. Many of them didn't come true. All right, below him, in the town among the trees, where friends of other days had honored him. So once upon a time, people knew him and honored him, right? A phantom salutation of the dead rang thinly till old Eben's eyes were dim. So now he looks down at the town and he hears phantom salutations. First off, what is a salutation? Yeah, it's like a hello, how you doing, right? Why the phantom salutations?
They're all dead. All the people that used to greet him are dead.
Yeah, he can imagine their voices, but they're gone. He's outlived them all. So when my dad, before my dad passed away, he passed away maybe about 4 years ago now. When he was like in his mid to late 80s, I mean, he started every day by reading the obituaries. And it's kind of funny because he obviously would know people of a certain generation that were passing away, right? And he always had funerals that he had to go to. Sometimes it was 2 in a week. But he would, of course, read the obituaries, and then he'd always make the joke, well, I outlived that guy, right? And he felt pretty good about that. He was a character, though. Okay, he really was. you feel like, you know, you've got Eben Flood here who is looking down over this town and listening in his mind's ear to all these old folks that have gone before him, right? But he's the last one. Then, as a mother lays her sleeping child down tenderly, fearing it may awake, he set the jug down slowly at his feet with trembling care, highlight this, knowing that most things break. So he takes that jug of wine or whiskey or moonshine, right, and as carefully as a mother would lay a sleeping baby down, he gently places it on the ground, knowing that most things break. What does he understand?
Nothing's permanent.
Yeah, life is fragile. Patrick, are y'all listening? Okay. Nothing, I mean, we're fragile, right? Only when assured that on firm earth it stood, as the uncertain lives of men assuredly did not. He paced away, and with his hand extended, paused again. Well, Mr. Flood, we have not met like this in a long time, and many a change come to both of us, I fear, since last it was we had a drop together. Welcome home. Convivially, by the way, means just in a friendly tone, right? Convivially returning with himself, again, he raised the jug to the light, and with an acquiescent quaver said, well, Mr. Flood, if you insist, I might. Only a very little, Mr. Flood, for auld lang syne. No more, sir, that will do. And so for the time, apparently it did. And Eben evidently thought so too. By the way, Auld Lang Syne, that is the song that's sung at New Year's. How many of you guys watch It's a Wonderful Life around Christmas time? You don't? Oh, you've got to watch the movie. It's so good. Yeah. So at the end, they gather around the Christmas tree and they sing for Auld Lang Syne. It means for like old times of remembrance, right? So, of course, he's there by himself, toasting himself, drinking by himself, which is kind of sad. And here we have, soon amid the silver loneliness of night, he lifted up his song and sang, secure with only 2 moons listening, until the whole harmonious landscape rang. Okay, first off, why do you think his loneliness is described as being silver? Like, what's the light at night here on him? It's the moon, yeah. The moon is casting this kind of silver light on him. In fact, there are 2 moons listening. Why do you think this man sees 2 moons? What's he been doing? He's been nipping at that jug, right? So now his vision is kind of blurred. Okay? All right, so for Auld Lang Syne, the weary throat gave out, the last word wavered, and the song being done, he raised again the jug, regretfully shook his head, so he kind of clears his vision. Now there's only one of him, 1 moon, right? And again is alone. Now highlight all this, y'all. There was not much that was ahead of him. What does that mean? Yeah, getting close to the end, right? And there was nothing in the town below where strangers would have shut the doors that friends had opened long ago. Wow, that's pretty sad right there. Okay, so there's a lot of pathos here, and I think when it comes to the psychology of the character, I mean, Eben Flood kind of reminds us that he's got a story. He's lived a long life. He's probably got a lot that he could tell, but apparently nobody in that little town is listening anymore. And it kind of reminds me that sometimes we forget our elderly, you know, in society, which is kind of sad, actually. Don't you think? So that party that would go up to that hill to talk about the year and drink a little and celebrate has become a party of one because he's outlived all his friends. Ah, so sad. All right, let's shift gears. We're going to